Hello, and let's start with new topic in Indian Polity series: salient features of the Indian Constitution. Lengthiest written constitution. The Indian Constitution is the longest of all written constitutions globally. Originally had a preamble, 395 articles, in 22 parts, and 8 schedules. Presently has a preamble, about 470 articles, in 25 parts, and 12 schedules. Size factors: geographical vastness/diversity, influence of the bulky Government of India Act of 1935, single constitution for both centre and states, and dominance of legal luminaries. Drawn from various sources, borrowed from nearly every major constitution, example USA, Ireland, Canada, Australia, and the Government of India Act of 1935, which heavily influenced the structural part. Fundamental rights were inspired by the American Constitution, directive principles by the Irish Constitution, and the parliamentary system by the British Constitution. Blend of rigidity and flexibility, a synthesis of rigid, special procedure for amendment, like the US, and flexible, ordinary law procedure for amendment, like the UK. Article 368 provides for amendment by a special majority of Parliament, and for some provisions, by a special majority plus ratification by half of the states. Federal system with unitary bias, establishes a federal system, 2 governments, division of powers, written constitution, etc. Also has strong unitary features, a strong center, single constitution, single citizenship, integrated judiciary, and emergency provisions. Article 1 describes India as a union of states. Often described as quasi-federal, KC-WIR, or cooperative federalism, Granville-Austin. Parliamentary form of government, opted for the British Westminster model based on cooperation and coordination between the legislature and executive. Features include nominal, president, and real, prime minister, executives, majority party rule, and collective responsibility of the executive to the legislature. Unlike the British Parliament, the Indian Parliament is not a sovereign body. Synthesis of parliamentary sovereignty and judicial supremacy, strikes a balance between the British principle of parliamentary sovereignty and the American principle of judicial supremacy. The Supreme Court can declare parliamentary laws unconstitutional, judicial review, and Parliament can amend major portions of the Constitution, constituent power. Integrated and independent judiciary, establishes a single, integrated judicial system with the Supreme Court at the top, followed by high courts and subordinate courts. This system enforces both central and state laws. Guaranteed independence through provisions like security of tenure, fixed service conditions, and all Supreme Court expenses being charged on the Consolidated Fund of India. Fundamental Rights, Part 3 guarantees 6 fundamental rights, Articles 14 to 32, promoting the idea of political democracy. They are justiciable, enforceable by courts, Supreme Court can issue writs. Not absolute, subject to reasonable restrictions and can be suspended during a national emergency, except Articles 20 and 21. Directive Principles of State Policy, Part 4 a novel feature, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, aiming to establish a welfare state and promote social and economic democracy. They are non-justiciable, not enforceable by courts, but are declared fundamental in the governance of the country. Fundamental Duties, Part 4a added by the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976, on Swaran Singh Committee recommendation. One more was added by the 86th Amendment Act, 2002. Specifies 11 duties, such as respecting the Constitution and protecting sovereignty. They are non-justiciable. A secular state, the term secular was added to the preamble by the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. Embodies the positive concept of secularism, giving equal respect and protection to all religions. Universal adult franchise, every citizen aged 18 years or above has the right to vote, reduced from 21 by the 61st Amendment Act of 1988. Single citizenship, provides for a single Indian citizenship, meaning all citizens enjoy the same rights across the country, unlike the dual citizenship in the USA. Independent bodies, established constitutional bodies to safeguard the democratic system, such as the Election Commission, Controller and Auditor General of India, CAG, and Union/State Public Service Commissions, UPSC/SPSC. Emergency provisions, enables the President to effectively meet extraordinary situations. 3 types, national, Article 352, State/President's Rule, Articles 356/365, and financial, Article 360. Converts the federal structure to a unitary one during an emergency without formal amendment. 3-tier government, added a 3rd tier, local government, through the 73 RD Amendment Act, 1992, for panchayats, rural, and the 74th Amendment Act, 1992, for municipalities, urban. Cooperative societies, given constitutional status and protection by the 97th Amendment Act of 2011, making the right to form them a fundamental right. Criticism of the Indian Constitution. 1. A borrowed constitution. Criticism, described as a bag of borrowings, hodgepodge constitution, or a patchwork because it drew provisions from many world constitutions. Rebuttal, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar argued that given the history of constitutional drafting, all modern constitutions share fundamentals. The framers made necessary modifications to suit Indian conditions and avoided faults of other constitutions. 2. A carbon copy of the 1935 Act. Criticism, called a carbon copy of the 1935 Act or an amended version of the 1935 Act, N. Srinivasan, Sir Ivor Jennings. Critics noted the textual copying of many provisions. Rebuttal, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar made no apologies for borrowing from the Government of India Act, 1935, noting that fundamental ideas have no patent rights. He clarified that the borrowed provisions largely related to administrative details. 3. Un-Indian or anti-Indian criticism, claimed to be un-Indian because it failed to reflect Indian political traditions or spirit. Described as a slavish imitation of the West, Lokanath Misra, making it unsuitable for India. Underlying concern, constitution makers were seen as too westernized, music of an English band instead of Veena or sitar k Hanumanthya. 4. An un-Gandhian constitution. Criticism, alleged to be un-Gandhian because it did not incorporate the philosophy and ideals of Mahatma Gandhi, particularly failing to base the political system on village panchayats and district panchayats. Comment, K. Hanumanthya stated it was exactly the kind of constitution Mahatma Gandhi did not want. 5. Elephantine size. Criticism, called too bulky and detailed, containing unnecessary elements, Sir Ivor Jennings. Comment, H. V. Kamath remarked that, like the elephant crest of the Constituent Assembly, the Constitution was the bulkiest that the world has produced. 6. Paradise of the lawyer's. Criticism, deemed too legalistic, complicated, and verbose, making it difficult for the common man to understand. Comment, Sir Ivor Jennings called it a lawyer's paradise. H. K. Maheshwaram suggested the legal language would promote litigation. P. R. Deshmukh found it too ponderous, like the ponderous tomes of a law manual rather than a socio-political document. India Constitution of India, Structure and Sources. Parts of the Constitution, Table 3.1, the Constitution is currently divided into 25 parts, originally 22. Part. Subject matter. Key articles. 3. Fundamental rights 12 to 35. 4. Directive principles of state policy 36 to 51. 4a. Fundamental duties 51a. The Union government 52 to 151. 6. The state governments 152 to 237. 7. The states in Part B of the first schedule 238 deleted by 7th Amendment, 1956. 9. The Panchayats 243 to 243 added by 73rd Amendment, 1992. 9a. The Municipalities 243p to 243 zg added by 74th Amendment, 1992. 9b The Cooperative Societies 243ZH to 243ZT added by 97th Amendment, 2011. Addition/deletion added by 42nd Amendment, 1976. Part Subject Matter Key Articles Addition/deletion XIVA Tribunals 323A to 323B added by 42nd Amendment, 1976. 18 Emergency Provisions 352 to 360 XX Amendment of the Constitution 368 2. Important Articles, Table 3.2, Key Articles cover the following subjects: Union and Territory, Art. 1. Name and Territory of the Union, Art. 3. Formation of new states. Fundamental Rights, FRS Art 14, Equality before law, Art 17, Abolition of Untouchability, Art 19, Freedom of Speech, etc., Art 21, Life and Personal Liberty, Art 21A, Right to Elementary Education, Art 32, Remedies for Enforcement of FRS/writs. Directive Principles, DPSP Art 40, Organization of Village Panchayats, Art 44, Uniform Civil Code, Art 50, Separation of Judiciary from Executive, Art 51, International Peace. Executive Powers, Art. 72, President's Pardoning Power, Art. 123, President's Ordinance Power, Art. 352/356/360, Emergency Provisions. Judiciary and Federalism, Art. 143, President's Power to Consult SC, Art. 226, High Court's Writ Power, Art. 262, Interstate River Disputes, Art. 263, Interstate Council. Finance and Property, Art. 112, Annual Financial Statement/Budget, Art. 280, Finance Commission, Art. 300A, Right to Property. Key Statutory Bodies, Art. 315, Public Service Commissions, Art. 324, Election Commission. Special Provisions, Art. 368, Power to amend the Constitution. 3 Schedules of the Constitution, Table 3.3, the Constitution contains 12 schedules, originally 8. Added by amendment. Schedule Subject Matter Key Details. First, States and Union Territories names and territorial jurisdiction. Second, emoluments, salaries, allowances, and privileges of President, governors, judges, etc. Third, oaths and affirmations, forms of oaths for Union ministers, MPs, judges, etc. Fourth, Rajya Sabha seats, allocation of seats to states and UTs. Seventh, Division of Powers. Union list, 98 subjects, state list, 59 subjects, and concurrent list, 52 subjects. Eighth, languages. 22 languages recognized, originally 14. Ninth, validation of acts/regulations protected from judicial scrutiny, subject to Supreme Court review post 1973. First Amendment, 1951, 10th Anti-Defection Law, disqualification for defection. 52nd Amendment, 1985, Schedule 11th 12th Subject Matter Key Details added by amendment. Panchayats powers, authority, and 29 matters for panchayats. 73rd Amendment, 1992, Municipalities powers, authority, and 18 matters for municipalities. 74th Amendment, 1992, 4. Sources of the Constitution, Table 3.4, provisions were borrowed and adapted from various sources. Government of India Act of 1935, provided the framework for the federal scheme, Office of Governor, Judiciary, and Emergency Provisions. British Constitution, influenced the parliamentary government, rule of law, single citizenship, and cabinet system. U.S. Constitution, inspired the fundamental rights, independence of judiciary, judicial review, and the impeachment of the President. Irish Constitution, source of the directive principles of state policy and the method of presidential election. Canadian Constitution, adopted the concept of federation with a strong centre and the vesting of residuary powers in the centre. Australian Constitution, source of the concurrent list and the provision for the joint sitting of Parliament. Weimar Constitution, Germany mechanism for suspension of fundamental rights during emergency. Soviet Constitution, USSR added fundamental duties and the ideals of justice in the preamble. Thank you for joining today's session. Remember, knowledge grows when shared. Stay inspired and keep learning.